Welcome to MYND Initiative. Now we're a group, more like a family, of diverse individuals from all walks of life, from every corner in Australia, coming together for one collective goal, and that is improving Australia's general understanding of mental health issues, educating people on what it's like to live day by day with a mental health condition. Because at the end of the day, what is mental health? More like, what does mental health mean to you? Because here at MYND Initiative, we recognize that our own journey in understanding our own sense of mental health is unique to us. We all go through a variety of different events and experiences throughout the course of our lives that influence the way that we view the world around us. And in that sense, the way that we view our own health. Now, with that in mind, we want to work with you. Together with your help, we can go into our local communities and set up educational programs that are appropriate to the people that we work with, which will help facilitate better learning of mental health issues. Now, these sorts of programs can come in all shapes and sizes, whether they be seminars, lectures, discussion groups, any sort of program that can help facilitate a paradigm shift in the way that people view good mental health hygiene. Now, that's not all we do here at MYND Initiative, because we also recognize that good mental health plays a pivotal part in the way that we experience joy and success in every facet of our life. And we want to celebrate that fact. We're creating community events and programs that everyone can engage in, which can help promote good mental health practices. Some programs we have in the works include podcasts, cooking segments, and even musical events. Because at the end of the day, mental health matters to everybody. Mental health issues can affect anybody. Now, if that's a message that you can get behind, come join us at the MYND Initiative family and help make a difference.
Hey guys, I'm Ren and I am the Chief Design Officer of MYND Initiative Incorporated. I am here with Nadi, our CEO and founder. Hey Nadi, how you going?
Not too bad, not too bad. Ren, how are you doing?
Yeah, pretty good, pretty good. We are here to commemorate the launch of an organization that is very close to my heart. Um, I guess, it's been a really long journey, 6 years in the making. And I remember when you came to me, Nadi, to ask me to help and come aboard with this initiative, and I jumped at the chance. And, I was just wondering, how did MYND actually come about?
Well, I guess there were many different sort of uh, inspirations, really, Ren, to start Mind Initiative, but how it all started was just a conversation between two friends. I remember I was meeting up with a friend of mine just to watch a game of cricket at one of our houses, just sitting on the sofas. And it was at the end of a long day of work, and we were just talking about, the stresses of work. And, my conversation with him, we usually are pretty open about the fact that, we'd gone through various different mental health stresses and conditions throughout our own lives. And look, we were both of South Asian background, and I remember thinking that when we were talking about how the overall community that we come from perceives mental health, we noticed that while those communities were beautiful, culturally diverse, and generally very accepting communities, there were always different sort of narratives related to the concept of practicing good mental health hygiene that sort of served as barriers to understanding, what mental health was about. It was almost like, yeah, we mental health is important, but you'll never see people in our community have issues with mental health because of insert reason here. There was always some sort of reason that sort of became very specific to the group that we were talking about. And it sort of inspired myself and my friend, to rally together a whole group of people, some people who've gone through mental health conditions and others who are just passionate mental health advocates, to work together to eventually create a program where within which we can create other specific educational programs with members from different local communities. together in cooperation, we can set up these programs to help educate people about practicing proper mental health hygiene and eventually build gigantic support networks across communities. And look, it's been a long time coming, but I really am proud of what we've done so far. And I couldn't have done it without the help of many individuals such as you, Ren. Many of you guys might not know, but Ren helped design the Mind Initiative logo and helped build the Mind Initiative branding. And having you today co-host this event with me is incredible. And I can't wait to work with you to show everyone what sort of projects we have upcoming.
Oh, thanks, Nadi. I think, oh gosh, I don't even know what to say right now. I'm a bit speechless.
Oh, that's
I guess, we are going to go through some of the programs that MYND are planning on joining next year for everyone who's watching. And tonight we have a few music acts and some talking segments. I guess, Nadi, would you like to introduce our first music act?
Yeah, sure. But before I do that, Ren, I just wanted to explain a bit more to the people watching who might be wondering, why do we have music acts when we're having a mental health organization launch event? Well, effectively, like as I described in that video there, when I had a bit less facial hair, the effectively some of the programs and the education programs that we want to put out for the different communities programs that will help people understand how simple it is to integrate proper mental health hygiene techniques into your day-to-day life, and even as part of regular activities that we enjoy doing, that involves things like making cooking shows for mental health, having effectively talk shows regarding mental health topics, but also musical programs. Music is a universal language. It's a beautiful way that we can express or even hold an emotion in the palm of our hand when talking to each other. And I think that the way that we effectively express emotion through music, we can effectively demonstrate great mental health messages to the world. Now, we have 3 musical acts for you today, like Ren said before, and the first person who's going to be performing is called Karthik Kuna, an Australian Singaporean artist who's based here in Sydney, who's created a beautiful piece called Better Days. And he's performing just with his guitar and just speaking to the camera, and you'll see how beautiful it is that music can express such beautiful messages regarding mental health. So without further ado, I give you Karthik Kuna.
Hi, my name is Karthik Kuna, and this is my song, A Better Day. Hold tight, just for a while, you're gonna see a better day. Sleep tight, dream about that smile that you'd see on a better day. You gotta have faith, gotta have love, pray for guidance from above, 'cause this house without a roof is on the move. So we gotta be thankful for all that we've got, hopeful for a better day. Thankful for all that we've got, hopeful for a better day. Warm soup, hot cup of tea that you drink on a better day. Spare change for the song that we sing and hope for a better day. You gotta have faith, gotta have love, pray for guidance from above, 'cause this house without a roof is on the move. So we gotta be thankful for all that we've got, hopeful for a better day. for a better day. Gotta have faith, gotta have love. Pray for guidance from above. 'Cause this house without a roof is on the move. So we gotta be thankful for all that we've got. Hopeful for a better day. We gotta be thankful for all that we've got. Hopeful for a better day. For a better day. For a better day.
Yeah, wow, that was absolutely amazing. I think I was crying mostly through that performance. Uh, you know, as a singer-songwriter myself, I think that music is such an amazing way to get a message out there, and that was just left me speechless. Yeah, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful performance. Yeah, so I'm going to hand it back over to Nadi, who is going to introduce us to our first talking segment.
Yep. Thank you so much, Ren. Oh, it was a beautiful piece of music. I think that it's so beautiful to see artists taking part in projects like this. So for our first talking segment, guys, I'm going to introduce you guys to one of our webinar head creators. So as part of Mind Initiative, not only do we want to create these programs that sort of encourage engagement in proper, mental health hygiene techniques, but also we want to create programs that, provide great mental health education. What it's like to, look after our own mind. And we want to do that in a casual, friendly way. And we've got a great team of people who have set up some online classes called webinars. And the head of that team is a Miss Lisa Rowlands, who effectively is a mental health educator, has set up a variety of different courses online related to mental health first aid, and is an amazing speaker, and it's our great privilege to have her on board at that team. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Lisa Rowlands, who's going to speak a bit more about our webinars, which are coming up.
Though we all strive for optimal mental health and well-being, it's not realistic for any of us to achieve this all of the time. We have our ups and we have our downs, and for some people this may result in a diagnosed mental illness. No one is immune, but working on good mental health strategies wherever we can is important, and belonging to and feeling part of community is one of these. Hi, I'm Lisa Rowlands, and I'm here to introduce you to the MYND Initiative webinar series. Through my background of working with people experiencing mental illness, combined with skills as a facilitator of education and training, make up my passion to raise awareness and break down some of the still existing myths and stigma related to mental illness. Whether this be through webinars or structured programs such as mental health first aid, personalised workplace or community training, or even accredited vocational training qualifications, all these opportunities add up to improved outcomes for people living with mental illness. I've continually been impressed by stories I hear from people living with mental health issues about their amazing positive outcomes, but sadly also ongoing daily battles with stigma and having to continuously struggle for community acceptance and support. We've come a long way in our efforts as a community to raise awareness and break down some of the myths and stigma related to mental illness, but there is still some way we can work together to get there. Some progress has been made in stigma reduction, community education, and a much more empowering approach using recovery driven by people with lived experience of mental illness. The MYND webinar series has been created to provide the opportunity to not only provide information, but to create open conversations around a range of topics, exploring issues and solutions with and for people living with mental illness in such a way that the content is accessible for a wide range of people. The ultimate goal of MYND is to help raise awareness, breaking down stigma of mental illness. And this webinar initiative will support that. We aim to run a series of online seminars throughout 2021, with each webinar being approximately 30 to 45 minutes in length, and this will include time for questions and discussion. There will be a range of presenters facilitating the webinars, but there is a space also for interested people to share and participate in whichever way they feel most comfortable with. Please do note that the webinars are not therapy groups or even an opportunity for individual counselling, and they're certainly not a space for discussing diagnosis of other people or selves. If any of these supports are required, there is information on the MYND or other websites that have specific connections and information that you might find useful. In early 2021, the series will get off to a flying start with a webinar titled Kicking Off the Conversation. Have you ever had concerns about someone's well-being but felt too uncomfortable to raise this as a subject with them? Maybe it was someone in the workplace, a friend, a family member. Have you ever asked someone that question, are you okay? But then not knowing what to do with what they say next. Or if no response comes, what do you do then? In this webinar, we will explore just why it is so important to overcome the reluctance to have these conversations. There will also be suggested approaches for starting and continuing that conversation in practice. We will include scenarios where there might be an urgent or acute situation, as well as when concern may be just emerging. Note also that 45 minutes really just provides a starter on a topic like this, but we will also provide links of where you could go for further information, or we could also possibly consider arranging additional webinars on the subject if it was requested. I really hope to see many of you there for webinar 1 in 2021, and if you have any suggestions for webinar topics, please feel free to pass them on to MYND. Enjoy the rest of this event, and I wish you all a safe and happy break at the end of a very challenging year. Thank you.
Yeah, so that was our wonderful and beautiful Lisa Rollins presenting our webinars and talking about what she's going to do in the next year. So yeah, very grateful for Lisa to be on the MYND team. You've given us so much insight into, I guess, giving us information on how we can look after ourselves. Yeah, so I'm going to hand it over to Nadi, who is going to introduce us to our next act.
Yep. Again, thank you so much, Lisa. Like Ren said, like, you're so grateful for her input and for her webinar series that we'll see sometime next year. So our next act is actually a classical musical piece, which is performed by our amazing violinist Amol Gananth, who's actually a member of our own executive board. Now, Amol Gananth is an accomplished violinist who started learning the violin from the age of 10. It's always been a massive passion of his. He's put a lot of emotion into all of the music he plays in. And from the start of his journey learning violin in junior school, he's come up all the way through the ranks to having performed with youth Melbourne orchestras, with university orchestras, and having toured overseas in New York and Italy. He always likes to express emotion through his own creative, original pieces. And today we have the privilege of listening to one of his amazing originals talking about the whole spectrum of darkness and lightness regarding our own mental health. So without further ado, I introduce you to the beautiful piece, Darkness and Lightness, created and performed by Mr. Morgananth. Wow. I mean, it's amazing how someone can express such beautiful emotions and messages, even without using words. Again, like we talked about earlier today, I think this is the pure power of music to express great messages about emotion. So, guys, for this next segment, it's going to be a bit different because we're not actually going to be talking about the sort of programs that we're going to be putting out there in this next segment, because we're going to be focusing on the individual stories behind our mental health journey. We all recognize that everyone has their own journey to understanding their own mind and understanding themselves as people. And in a way, we all go through different roller coasters to help learn how we can best manage our own story, in a sense. And effectively, today we have one member of our team who's willing to talk about her own personal journey to understanding and embracing herself. And that is my amazing co-host, Renee Kashmir Simpson. So without further ado, I give you Ren's story.
I want to speak about a specific time I experienced stigma due to my mental health and addiction issues. It is probably one of the most vivid memories I have. I was using drugs pretty heavily. My mental health was at its worst. My life was completely unmanageable. It was around the middle of 2019. I'd been accessing community mental health services due to the severity of my mental health. At the time, I was receiving home visits from the acute care team, and on this particular visit, I'd not met either of the clinicians. The visit started off okay, and then we sat down. From there, it went downhill. What preceded was half an hour of assumptions and what felt like badgering. The clinician said things to me like, "The reason you have no food in the cupboard is because you use drugs. Your car is unregistered because you use drugs. Your mental health is so severe because you use drugs. You're not able to do things because you use drugs." Eventually, after so many horrible things being said, I snapped. I interrupted his high-mighty rant and said, "Maybe the reason I use drugs is because at the age of 2, I was diagnosed with cancer." His expression changed instantly and he looked at his counterpart. They were both speechless. Internally, I was screaming. I just wanted to set him straight. I was saying things in my head like, maybe I used drugs because at the age of 10, I was being bullied so severely that on the way to school, I would look out the car window at places, imagining killing myself. Maybe I used drugs because at the age of 14, I was sexually assaulted. Maybe I used drugs because at the age of 15, I was diagnosed with conversion disorder. I had lost the use of my legs and was trying to cope with that ever since. Maybe I used drugs because I was so ashamed of myself and my body that I knew if I did it right, I would lose weight. Maybe I've been plagued with so much distress due to my mental health, like chronic suicidal thoughts, self-harm issues, eating issues, trauma, and I felt I had exhausted all my other options and had to resort to using. Maybe I used drugs because when I first tried pot, it gave me a little bit of relief. I wanted to say, maybe I used drugs because you guys weren't doing your job properly. I was so angry at all the assumptions he had made. Yes, there may have been some truth to it, but it just wasn't a simple case of drug abuse. He had obviously not taken the time to get to know my case. He didn't know me, my story, or the reason why I started using. At that point, I was 25 and had only been using drugs for 2 years. I wanted to highlight this story because it's a classic example of someone judging a book by its cover. I love the saying, don't judge a book by its cover, because you never know what the pages hold. Because I don't think anyone has the right to judge someone based on how they look or their behavior. I have experienced a lot of stigma due to my mental health and drug addiction. It's why I think that the things that MYND do are so important. At MYND, we believe that mental health matters to everyone, and no matter what someone is going through, whether it be mental or physical, no one has the right to stigmatize them, or, as the definition states, put a mark of disgrace on them or their circumstance. Thank you. My name is Renee Kashmir Simpson. I am the Chief Design Officer at MYND Initiative Incorporated. Welcome to my mind.
Wow. That was absolutely incredible. I really have to thank you, Ren, and the fact that I really admire the fact that you were brave enough to share your story with us today. Look, it takes a while for anybody, if they ever would be ready to share their own story, to discuss aspects so dear to them that help shape their own identity and the way that they look at themselves and effectively their own mental health. But I guess it's so important that we help each other through the journey to feel more comfortable with our own mind, and if we feel comfortable to talk about, things that we're going through and help work together to feel better and get better. So guys, our next act, our next musical act to be fair, is a singer-songwriter actually by the name of Justine Alkachi. She is an amazing emotive singer who resides here in Sydney. She loves to put all of her emotion and feeling into every song that she performs. And today you're going to see just how amazing her performance really is. Today, she's got a beautiful song called Morning Light. So without further ado, I give you the wonderful Justine Alkachi.
Hi guys, thank you so much for having me today. My name is Justine Alkachi. I'm going to play you a new single that I released this year. It's called Morning Light. And I hope you like it and I hope it makes you smile. I turned a corner last night. I'm feeling light on this crystal clear high. I turned my phone off and handled it all. I'm the boss, baby. Yeah, that's for sure. A hop, skip, and a jump, that's what they told me. But I'm feeling so lost in reality, and I can't wait until the 16th of May. Maybe the sun will shine on my face. Hey, what if I stop looking for you? Will you show yourself in the morning light? What if I stop looking for you? Will you knock on my door and pick me up off the floor this morning light? Ooh, this morning light, yeah. When the weather was dry, I was a little girl, and I put my hopes out into the world, and I trusted it so pure, so pure, so pure. And they told me it's a hop, skip, and a jump, that's what they told me. But I'm feeling so lost in reality, and I can't wait until the 16th of May. Maybe the sun will shine on my face. Hey, what if I stop looking for you? Will you show yourself in the morning light? What if I stop looking for you? Will you knock on my door and pick me up off the floor this morning light? Yeah, yeah, this morning light. Ooh, what if I stop looking for you? Will you knock on my door and pick me up off the floor this morning light? Yeah, this morning light. Mm-hmm.
Are you talking, Nadi?
Yeah, I'm okay. Sorry about that, guys. That was an amazing piece. I was just so like I was just I was just so caught up with this amazing like piece of music by Justine, the Morning Light. It was a shorter piece than the others, but it was a beautiful emotional piece. She, like I said before, she really knows how to emote, and I think that it's so again it's so important to express ourselves, and leading into our next segment, there's a few different talking segments and programs that we're going to be putting out there, and the first of which I'm going to let Ren introduce to you guys.
Yeah, thanks, Nadi. So the next segment I'm going to introduce is one that is quite close to my heart again, because it's one that I help set up and help bring to life. And it's a podcast segment presented by the very lovely Rawani. She is an amazing young woman, and she's so passionate about debunking stigma and breaking the stigma.
Mental
Yeah,
health, yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Awesome.
So I guess without further ado, I would like to now hand it over to Rawani.
No worries.
Hi everyone, I'm Rawani and I'm really excited to be part of MYND Initiative's launch event. As Nadisha said, I'm going to be involved in MYND Initiative's podcast, where we're going to talk about how the stigma around mental illness affects people's lives. I've worked a little bit as a medical doctor, so I have a particular interest in how the stigma in mental illness can impact the way that people access healthcare and how they receive healthcare. But in doing some research, and I'm sure that people watching at home will also know, the stigma around mental illness can impact any part of your life, making friends, employment, how you just feel about yourself. So my hope for this podcast is that we can talk openly about the stigma surrounding mental health. Firstly, to reduce that loneliness that comes from having a burden that you're trying to hide from the world. But secondly, to show how far-reaching the effects of stigma can be and why we really need to do something about it. We're going to have guests from all different parts of the community to show how the stigma from mental illness can affect all of us in different ways. We want to talk about how we as individuals and as a society can help to break down the stigma in mental illness, change the narrative around mental illness, and also learn how to practice good mental health hygiene in our daily lives. So watch this space. Have a lovely Christmas and New Year, and we'll see you in 2021.
All right. Thank you so much for that, Ruani. And guys, we've got a whole season of podcasts coming up in mid to late January where we're going to be talking about breaking down the stigma and what we as individuals, as well as we as a society, can do to help promote practicing better mental health hygiene. Well, that was an amazing few different segments, and I really thank everyone for tuning in today. So we've got a lot of speakers who've spoken today, a lot of performers who have performed for us today. But I just want to remind you guys that the sort of things that we've introduced and talked about on today's program is just the tip of the iceberg of the sort of programs that we plan to release for you guys from MYND Initiative in the year 2021. I mean, from various different art and media programs that we propose to release and plan to release, we also want to work on those specific community programs that we mentioned earlier. It's going to be amazing, and I really encourage everyone to be a part of it. Because at the end of the day, mental health matters to everyone. Mental health issues can affect everyone, or anyone rather. And if this message resonates with you, come join us at the MYND Initiative family. Because it's so important, isn't it, Ren?
Yeah, it is. No, mental health does matter to everyone, and breaking the stigma of mental health is so important because it just should not exist. It's it's crap, and it's just something that is bringing down people that don't need to be brought down. I am so grateful to be a part of this project, to be able to bring this organization to life because, as I said earlier, I've experienced a lot of stigma myself, and I found it really hard to actually live sometimes because of my mental health. So programs like the ones that MYND are doing are so important. I guess I just want to say a huge thank you from the bottom of my heart to everyone who has been a part of MYND over the last 6 years, to everyone who's been behind the scenes of this event. It wouldn't have happened without you guys. So thank you guys so much. Just a little bit of a plug. So we do have a Give Now page. So if you would like to donate as a once-off or on a regular basis, the link is in the description box of this YouTube live, as well as on our website. So if you would like to help us at MYND continue the programs that we are doing, we would be eternally grateful. So yeah, I think that's it, Nadi.
That is it. Thank you so much, Ren. And I'm so grateful to have you on board. And thank you so much, guys. Please keep in touch and please keep attuned for the programs we have. And so we'll be saying goodbye to you guys from over here. Before I say goodbye, I just had a quick memory. I want to thank Mr. Ranul Narangoda for helping me film here at the start of this program. But then again, that's it from us. Thank you so much, guys. And until next time, keep us in mind.